Gabriel Ramirez, the mayor's son, recently turned 18. Since childhood, he had everything he wanted: toys, designer clothes, the best school, fancy gadgets, and the opportunities to travel abroad whenever he pleased. The only thing lacking for the boy was love and care from his father, who was always busy with work. Sometimes it seemed to him that he saw his dad on TV more often than in real life. Fortunately, he always had many friends, not because he was the mayor's son, but because Gabriel had a cheerful and lively nature, drawing others to him like moths to a flame. He was the life of the party, always coming up with new ideas that others eagerly embraced. One day, when Gabriel was 15, he suggested to his friends to go to a new youth club where visiting rock musicians were supposed to perform. The concert inspired them so much that they decided to form their own band. Some of them already knew how to play the drums, another guy sang well, and Gabriel had some basic guitar skills. They found and rented a garage on the outskirts of the city where there were no residential buildings to bother anyone, and they enthusiastically immersed themselves in music. Not a single evening passed without rehearsals. Gabriel suddenly realized with surprise that he wanted to try writing songs himself. He spent long hours in his room with a pencil and notebook in hand, wandered around the city in search of inspiration, and almost completely abandoned his studies. However, his teachers liked him so much that they made all sorts of allowances for him. Finally, Gabriel's first song was ready, and his friends loved it. They didn't waste any time and started learning it that same evening. Gabriel was very pleased and realized that he should continue. When it was time to choose his future path, he really wanted to study to become a professional musician. But when one evening he mentioned this to his father, he only shook his head disapprovingly. Gabriel's father, Leonardo, was a powerful and stern man. He always wanted his son to continue his legacy and become a politician too. Leonardo enjoyed power and the respect of ordinary people, believing that there was nothing better in the world than being at the helm and making decisions. He wished for Gabriel the same life he had, without considering that the young man might have completely different interests. Moreover, upon hearing that his son wanted to become a musician, Leonardo was afraid it would tarnish his reputation. In the end, he forbade his son to pursue music and submitted his documents to the country's best university, where his son could receive a decent education. Gabriel encountered for the first time the realization that his desire was not fulfilled. This stirred up a storm of strong emotions within him: anger, resentment, the desire to assert his opinion, dissatisfaction with his father, disappointment that his position was not accepted. "You have no right to forbid me from doing what I want. This is my calling," Gabriel yelled. His father calmly looked at him. "Your calling is to preserve and continue what I started. That's my final word," he said firmly. "No. I'm not your possession," the boy exclaimed. With these words, he stormed out of his father's office and dashed into his own room. He had never behaved like this before. But now all the bitterness and disappointment he had felt his entire life, as he vainly tried to gain his father's attention, spilled out. The young man paced around the room, not knowing what to do or how to calm down. The image of his unyielding father still loomed large in his mind. In a fit of anger, Gabriel grabbed the keys to the brand new car Leonardo had given him for his 18th birthday, descended into the hallway, and bolted out of the house. It was evening, and a heavy rain was falling. By the time he reached the car, he was thoroughly soaked. Slumping into the driver's seat, he started the car and drove aimlessly. The rain pounded against the windshield, but Gabriel didn't care. He found himself in an unfamiliar part of town on the outskirts, where there were hardly any lights, and every other street lamp seemed to be out. Suddenly, Gabriel felt a profound exhaustion. His anger had dissipated somewhere, and he felt like a deflated balloon. He wasn't a confrontational person, and any argument threw him off balance. Especially since deep down, he deeply loved and respected his father, who had achieved so much in life. Gabriel always looked up to his dad as an example of perseverance and determination. He thought he could achieve much in life too, but he didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps. He felt he had a completely different path. But how to prove it to his father? How to convince him to allow him to decide how to live his life? Maybe he needed to give him time? Gabriel suddenly noticed a brightly lit sign for a bar and parked the car. The place was called Rock Jungle, as proclaimed by colorful flickering letters, one of which stubbornly refused to light up. The young man decided to go inside, have a drink, and rest for a while. Upon entering, he was surprised to see numerous plants scattered around as decoration. It felt like he had stepped into a real jungle. Of course, the plants were artificial. However, the peculiar lighting made the atmosphere of the bar mysterious and very atmospheric. Why have I never heard of this place before? Here, one can lose themselves in thought, and no one will disturb, the young man thought, deciding that next time he would come here to compose a new song. He approached the bar and ordered a cappuccino. The bartender looked at him in surprise, but said nothing. Gabriel never drank alcohol, it was a family rule. His father also abstained from alcohol, considering it inappropriate for someone of his stature. Gabriel sat on a high stool, waiting for his coffee, and only then noticed a small alcove at the back of the room. There, glimmering in the ambient lighting of the bar, stood musical instruments. "Do they play here?" Gabriel shouted over the loud music, pointing to the stage. The bartender simply nodded as he handed him his order. "Will there be performances tonight?" the young man clarified. "We have an open mic night tonight," the bartender replied. Gabriel whistled in surprise. "It will be interesting to listen to," he exclaimed. "Maybe even participate," he added mentally. The young man had never performed in an unfamiliar place in front of a new audience. Their band had so far been limited to home concerts, playing in front of friends, acquaintances, and classmates. The guys never pursued fame, engaging in music primarily for themselves. But today, Gabriel suddenly realized that he was ready to take the first step and introduce himself to the world. Partly, this decision came to him because he was still angry with his father. He imagined someone recording his performance on their phone and posting it on social media, tagging the mayor's son. Gabriel pictured his father's face and how angry he would be. Right now, the consequences didn't matter to him, all he wanted was to wipe the mask of perpetual composure from his father's face. Gabriel eagerly awaited the start of the concert. Finally, at exactly 11 o'clock, the stage lit up with the lights of several small spotlights, and a stocky bearded man in black rocker attire stepped onto it. He appeared to be around 40. Gabriel noticed that the bearded man was covered in tattoos and piercings. Although Gabriel had never considered getting a tattoo himself, he was now ready to do anything just to annoy his father and stand his ground. "Calm down," he told himself, focusing on what the man was saying. "Welcome to the Rock Jungles, lions and lionesses, tigers and tigresses. As usual on Saturdays, we have an open mic night. Anyone can participate. The only restriction I'll remind you of is, no pop. Everything else is allowed and highly encouraged. So, who's ready to kick off our evening?" After shouting all this into the microphone, the man scanned the crowd. A young man with long ginger dreadlocks was already making his way onto the stage from the audience. He was dressed in a black leather jacket with a huge wolf on the back and ripped jeans. In his hands, the guy held a golden electric guitar, which he immediately plugged into the speakers. Then he yelled something into the microphone in a foreign language and began strumming the strings. The guitar emitted a powerful sound. The guy started playing a lively tune and singing in an unfamiliar language. Gabriel liked the style and manner in which the young man presented himself. He slapped his hand on the bar counter, keeping the rhythm and eagerly awaiting the next musician. After the ginger guy, two girls took the stage, looking very much like sea sirens. Both had long black hair with red and purple strands, heavily lined eyes with black eyeliner, and dark blue lips. They were dressed in long cloaks, concealing their figures. One of the girls took the guitar, and the other sat behind the synthesizer. They sang a beautiful rock ballad about love and separation. Other musicians followed the girls, a blonde guy in an unbuttoned shirt with a tattoo of a guitar on his chest, a group of 3 girls in denim jackets, short miniskirts, and boots who sang a daring song that made the whole hall dance. Gabriel patiently waited for the microphone to free up. He guessed that the performers were regulars here and already had their own audience and fans who actively supported them. But this didn't scare him one bit. Gabriel was confident in himself, and besides, he just wanted to give it a try. Finally, the microphone freed up, and there were no new musicians in line for it. The stocky bearded man, who opened the evening, took the stage again. So, it seems the ranks of those willing to perform have thinned out. What a pity. Does no one else want to make themselves known? With these words, he glanced into the far corner, where tables were clustered amidst vines and monsters. Gabriel involuntarily looked there, but saw no movement. So, the stage was free. He boldly raised his hand, attracting the bearded man's attention. The man raised his eyebrows in surprise and grinned widely. "Oh, I think I see something." A young man, unfamiliar to me, expresses a desire to take the stage. Is that correct? Gabriel nodded and quickly jumped off his high stool. All eyes in the room turned to him. This slightly embarrassed the young man, and he even felt a bit dizzy. But Gabriel gathered all his willpower, took a deep breath, and, weaving through the tables, made his way to the stage. The bearded man smiled at him as he approached the microphone. When Gabriel found himself next to him, the man friendly patted him on the shoulder and said into the microphone, "We don't know you yet, unknown, but you're undoubtedly a talented young man. Please introduce yourself." Gabriel. He hesitated after stating his name and added, "Gabriel Ramirez." The room erupted in approving applause. "He's the mayor's son," someone said loudly. Gabriel reached for the guitar and slung the strap over his shoulder. After playing a few chords and deciding that the instrument was ready, Gabriel leaned into the microphone and said, "I'll play you my new song called Dewdrop Da." In the hall, sparse applause echoed once more as Gabriel began to play. Each time he touched the guitar, the young man forgot about everything else in the world. Even now, standing before unfamiliar faces, his thoughts drifted far away, into a realm of dreams and fantasies. He didn't even realize he had begun to sing with his beautiful deep voice. The audience in the hall froze in astonishment. The melody and voice were so beautiful that the young people feared to breathe, as if it might disrupt the atmosphere Gabriel had created. After playing the final chord, he opened his eyes and bowed to the audience. The hall erupted in applause. Young girls were already rushing towards Gabriel to take photos with him. It was pleasant for him to know that someone besides his friends and acquaintances appreciated his creativity. "Where can we listen to your songs?" asked one of the girls, a petite brunette. She was desperately trying to catch Gabriel's eye, eager to get to know him. The young man wrote down the website address where they and their friends uploaded tracks in her notebook and hurried back to his seat. He thought his performance would be the last, as there seemed to be no one else waiting to perform. However, the familiar bearded man, approaching the microphone, glanced once again towards the far corner of the hall. "So, our evening is coming to an end, but I'm 99% sure we have at least one more performer. Am I right?" Gabriel also looked towards the furthest tables, cleverly hidden behind plants. Moments passed. The audience in the hall fell silent. Finally, the artificial leaves rustled and parted, revealing a young girl. When Gabriel's gaze settled on her face, he forgot about everything else in the world. He had never seen such beautiful and deep eyes with long, velvety lashes on anyone before. The girl's light strands of hair shimmered like gold in the atmospheric light of the bar. Upon seeing the girl, several guys sitting at tables near the stage jumped up and started pushing chairs aside to clear a path. Only then did Gabriel notice that the girl was moving in a wheelchair, dressed in simple black jeans and a worn sweater. She approached the steps, and 2 strong men lifted her onto the stage. The bearded man leaned the microphone downwards to her level, and then handed her a guitar. The girl closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, then struck the strings and, without opening her eyes, began to sing with profound emotion. Gabriel froze in place. The girl had a very beautiful and gentle voice. It seemed to him as if he were hearing a sweet lullaby softly sung by a light sea breeze at dawn. Gabriel involuntarily closed his eyes and allowed himself to dissolve into the melody and voice accompanying her. Several times he caught himself thinking that he didn't want it to end, but unfortunately, the song suddenly concluded. That's how it is with many good things, Gabriel thought sadly as he opened his eyes. The audience applauded and cheered in unison. The girl smiled and whispered a thank you into the microphone before moving towards the edge of the stage. The same guys helped her descend, and a few moments later, the girl disappeared behind the artificial vines as if she had never existed. Just to be sure, Gabriel rubbed his eyes. The bearded man took the stage and took hold of the microphone. Well, I never doubted that little Ophelia would once again surpass herself. That was simply magical, wasn't it? The hall echoed his words with enthusiastic applause. And now, with regret, I declare the end of our evening. But don't be too sad, because in just a week, the open mic will be waiting for everyone again on this stage. Until next time, friends. Having said this, the bearded man turned off the microphone and began to fiddle with the equipment. Musicians approached him, asking him about something, and he responded with a wide smile. Gabriel tore his gaze away from the bearded man and looked around. He was searching for the girl in the wheelchair who had captivated him so. People were approaching him, and the young man politely responded to them, but his thoughts were occupied by the mysterious Ophelia. Finally, he made up his mind. Gabriel stood up, apologized to his companions, and headed towards the distant tables hidden behind the leaves. To his great disappointment, there was no one there. The girl in the wheelchair had vanished. Maybe I imagined her after all? Gabriel thought to himself. He returned to the bar, paid for his cappuccino, and left with a firm intention to return to the rock jungle in a week. He memorized the address, got into his car, and drove home. Everyone was already asleep when Gabriel quietly opened the door and entered the hall. Trying not to make any noise, he walked to his room, took a shower, and blissfully stretched out on fresh sheets. The image of the enchanting Ophelia still lingered before his eyes. In his dreams, she sang for him. The week passed very slowly. Gabriel hardly met his father. He left for work early in the morning and returned very late, by which time Gabriel was already in his room. But for the young man, this was even for the best. He wasn't in the mood to argue or assert his rights. The meeting with Ophelia had so excited him that he couldn't think of anything else. He shared the details of his own performance in the bar with his friends, but he preferred to keep silent about the girl in the wheelchair. He himself didn't know why he did it. It seemed to him that by telling someone about Ophelia, he would dispel the magic. He felt that by sharing the story with someone, it would turn into something mundane and ordinary. Finally, Saturday arrived. Gabriel started worrying early in the morning. What if Ophelia didn't come to the bar today? What if she came, but he couldn't talk to her again? This time, Gabriel firmly resolved to do everything possible to make it happen. He arrived an hour before the performances were due to start and immediately went to the far end of the hall to occupy one of the tables hidden by vines and monster leaves. As he understood it, Ophelia always sat here, waiting for other musicians to perform. Now all the tables in the corner were empty, and Gabriel worried again that Ophelia might not come. However, in a moment, the leaves parted, and the wheelchair rolled into the small secluded corner. Ophelia looked at Gabriel with surprise and embarrassment. Apparently, no one had ever thought of coming here before. "Hi," the boy said excitedly. "I hope I didn't startle you?" "No one usually comes here," murmured Ophelia. She wheeled over to the adjacent table and rested her hands on it. She had long, slender fingers. "Do you like being alone?" Gabriel asked. Ophelia simply nodded in response. "But you won't bother me," she added, throwing a quick glance at Gabriel. He blushed, almost drowning in her eyes. A waiter came in. He brought a menu for the boy and the girl and placed a tall, fogged glass in front of her. "As usual, mango juice for you, Ophelia," he said. When the young man left, Gabriel dared to say, "I really enjoyed your performance last Saturday. Do you write your own songs?" Ophelia blushed slightly and, without looking up, nodded. "I started writing after the accident," she whispered. "So that's why you—" Gabriel began but didn't finish. Everything was already clear. Ophelia nodded. "It happened 3 years ago," she unexpectedly confided. "I was 14 at the time. Dad lost control. I was sitting in the passenger seat." "I'm so sorry," Gabriel sincerely said. He looked at the girl, unable to tear his gaze away. She seemed so fragile and airy to him that he wanted to hug her so she wouldn't suddenly disappear. "My dad suffered too. Besides, he blamed himself for making me disabled. He started drinking, abandoned his job, and got fired. Now we're barely making ends meet thanks to sporadic earnings. I don't even know why I'm telling you all this." Gabriel stood up and moved to sit at the table with Ophelia. "Go on. I'm genuinely interested in learning more about you. I feel like you've been holding everything in for a long time." Ophelia nodded again. "After the accident, my world turned upside down. But unlike my father, I found salvation in creativity. I would fall asleep with a notebook in my hands, and a guitar would be on the neighboring pillow. Words, rhymes, and notes, that's all I have left." Gabriel nodded in understanding. He wanted to take Ophelia's hand, but he hesitated. The girl took a sip of juice and looked at him. "You're the mayor's son, aren't you? I remember you also sang last Saturday. You have a beautiful voice." "That was my first public performance," Gabriel admitted. Ophelia smiled, and her face lit up as if a little sun had ignited on it. Gabriel involuntarily admired her again, unable to tear his gaze away from her radiant eyes. "You're very talented," Ophelia added, without looking at the guy. "You'll have many fans." Did Ophelia say that with bitterness and regret? Gabriel wondered if he put himself in her shoes. Ophelia, confined to a wheelchair, inevitably compared herself to other healthy and carefree girls from the bar. Gabriel remembered how after his performance, newly minted fans approached him, how they looked into his eyes, wanting to impress. "You're better than all of them," the guy whispered unexpectedly to himself. However, his words came from the depths of his heart. Ophelia blushed and raised her eyes to him. Gabriel once again drowned in their depth. He could feel everything the girl had experienced: pain, bitterness, loss, as well as strength and faith in herself and her creativity. Gabriel reached out and took Ophelia's hand in his. She smiled trustingly at him. Gabriel almost physically felt the thread that had formed between them. Then the waiter arrived, and the guy let go of the girl's hand to avoid unnecessary gossip. As before, he ordered a cappuccino for himself and cheesecake with cocoa for Ophelia. When the waiter left, they resumed their conversation, but this time it was the most ordinary one. However, Gabriel never stopped feeling the deep bond of trust that had been established between them. Then the performances began. Gabriel and Ophelia listened to the musicians from their seats, and when everyone who wanted to sing had done so, the guy stood up and, circling the table, approached the girl. "I want you not only to listen but also to see me," he said gently, starting to wheel Ophelia toward the stage. The girl didn't object. When the bearded man saw them, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Who do I see?" It seems that the two golden voices of the jungle rock decided to sing a duet. Gabriel leaned toward Ophelia, making sure she was comfortable, and then swiftly climbed onto the stage. "Not yet, but I really like this idea," he exclaimed into the microphone and winked at the girl in the wheelchair. Some sideways glances were thrown at Ophelia, but she pretended not to notice. Gabriel took the guitar, touched the strings, and began to sing. He chose the most lyrical of his songs, and his gaze never left Ophelia. She smiled shyly. The song was very tender, and the audience held their breath, afraid to breathe. When Gabriel finished, The hall erupted in applause. Ophelia clapped too, tears in her eyes. Gabriel stepped off the stage and hugged her by the shoulders. It didn't go unnoticed, and other girls pursed their lips in dissatisfaction. The guy had managed to impress many. It was Ophelia's turn. This time, Gabriel and another young man lifted the wheelchair with the girl onto the stage. The bearded man once again lowered the microphone in front of her, handed her the guitar, and Ophelia began to sing. The magical melody captivated the audience. It started softly, like the rustle of leaves early in the morning or the murmur of pebbles when the sea is calm. Gabriel briefly thought that this is how mermaids sing. Then the melody and Ophelia's voice gained strength and sounded so multifaceted that not a single heart in the room remained untouched by the enchanting sounds of the song. Everyone froze again. Gabriel felt like he had never heard anything more beautiful in his life. Then Ophelia's voice unexpectedly fell silent, just like last time. The girl quietly thanked the audience. Gabriel hurried onto the stage to help lower the wheelchair. When they found themselves back in their leafy hideout, the boy asked Ophelia, "Are you going to disappear again, like last time?" The girl chuckled softly, her laughter sounding like music. Gabriel felt himself enchanted by Ophelia. "Yes, it's time for me to go," she whispered, looking at him. "Can I walk you home?" the boy asked. "No, it's not necessary. I live very close by," she replied. Gabriel nodded. "Will you be here next Saturday?" he asked hopefully. "Definitely," Ophelia whispered, but Gabriel heard her. When he was alone again, he already began to miss the girl. The following Saturday, everything repeated itself, but this time Gabriel managed to get Ophelia's phone number. They started messaging each other, sending favorite songs, wishing each other good night and good morning. Gabriel was so inspired by their communication that he began to receive several poems a day, and he couldn't keep up with writing them down. He never parted with his guitar and completely forgot about his studies. On Saturdays, the young people always met at the Rock Jungles to perform at the open mic. One day, Gabriel dared to invite Ophelia for a walk in the park during the week. She shyly agreed. They had a wonderful time, walking along the alleys, eating cotton candy and ice cream, and Gabriel won a toy for Ophelia at the shooting gallery. It was a cute pink teddy bear with a musical note on its belly. Unfortunately, the button broke immediately, and the melody didn't play. But Ophelia found a solution. She pressed the musical note and started singing herself. Gabriel laughed every time she did it. "I would love to fall asleep to your voice," he confessed. "Then I'll record my song in the studio for you," Ophelia replied. They sat at a table in a cafe. Gabriel drank his favorite cappuccino, and Ophelia drank mango juice. Hearing her words, the boy affectionately ran his hand through her golden hair and whispered in her ear, "I would love to hear you sing live." Ophelia just smiled in response. Gabriel returned from the walk late. He escorted Ophelia home, then walked for a long time, trying to hold on to the atmosphere of tenderness and romance he felt with the girl. When he entered the house, the living room lights were on. Gabriel was very surprised. It was well past midnight. His father came out at the sound of the door clicking in the hallway. He looked sternly at his son and waited for explanations. "Dad," the boy raised his eyebrows. "Why aren't you asleep yet?" "The same could be asked of you," his father said. "And also, why are your teachers calling from your school saying you've completely gone off the rails?" Gabriel was stunned. His teachers were calling his father? What? But I didn't do anything. His father frowned. "That's the problem. You've done nothing. Absolutely nothing for over a month. Just daydreaming. And how, tell me please, do you plan to pass your exams and get into university?" "Dad," Gabriel groaned tiredly, "not now." His father crossed his arms. "Then when?" "You're never home." Gabriel felt rage rising inside him. "You're never here either. I've told you, I want to be a musician. And my opinion hasn't changed." His father visibly paled. He was clearly angry, but restraining himself. So that's how it is? But I won't back down either. You'll go to the university I've chosen, and you'll get a decent profession. So I ask you to get rid of all these nonsense and focus on your studies." With these words, his father went back upstairs. He didn't look at his son again. The next day after school, Gabriel messaged Ophelia, "Want to see our garage?" "Where you rehearse?" she asked. "Exactly," Gabriel replied. "Why not?" Ophelia wrote back. "Then shall I pick you up at 7?" the boy asked. "Okay," the girl agreed. At exactly 7, Gabriel was at the girl's house. She was already waiting for him downstairs. He helped her into the car, then put the wheelchair in the trunk and got behind the wheel. The garage was on the other side of town, and Gabriel turned on their favorite music to make the long drive more enjoyable. Ophelia tapped her fingers to the rhythm with delight. The young couple had similar tastes, and they both enjoyed the same music. Finally, they arrived at the garage, and Gabriel helped Ophelia again. Then he opened the door and gave her a little tour. "It's so cozy here," exclaimed Ophelia, taking in the ambience. "Yeah, we guys set everything up to our liking," Gabriel remarked. He took out drinks from the fridge, soda and Ophelia's favorite juice, sliced cheese, and fruits. The young couple sat at a low table, ate, and chatted. Then Gabriel mentioned he had prepared a small surprise for Ophelia. With those words, he got up, took the guitar, and went to the makeshift stage. "I'm going to play a new song for you now. I dedicated it to you," Gabriel said softly, feeling his heart pounding with excitement. Ophelia pressed her hands to her chest, her eyes sparkling. Gabriel began to sing. It was a beautiful ballad in which he tried to express his feelings for the girl, although it wasn't easy. She was too ethereal and otherworldly to put into ordinary words what Gabriel felt around her. The young man's gift touched the girl to the depths of her soul. She couldn't even hold back her tears. Gabriel set down the guitar and sat next to her again. He gently wiped away her tears with the back of his hand. Ophelia looked into his eyes, and Gabriel once again drowned in their boundless depth. Then the guy leaned closer and kissed the girl on the lips tenderly. She timidly responded. "This is my first kiss," she whispered softly. Gabriel smiled and kissed Ophelia again. At that very moment, the garage door creaked, and Leonardo Ramirez appeared in the doorway. He was clearly furious, and seeing Gabriel with the girl, he flew into a rage. "So this is what you're doing instead of studying," he shouted. Gabriel jumped up, red as a tomato. Ophelia was embarrassed and looked down. "Dad, I'll explain everything. It's very serious to me," he muttered. But Gabriel's father didn't want to hear anything. In his hands, he held a smartphone. "Explain this first," he yelled and turned on the display. On the screen was a video of one of Gabriel's performances at the Rock Jungle Bar. Someone filmed it and posted it on social media, tagging the boy. "Yes, Dad, I told you I wanted to be a musician. Here, I'm performing a song of my own composition," Gabriel explained. The father stopped the video. "Just because you want to be a musician doesn't mean the whole town has to know about it. You've embarrassed me." Gabriel looked at his father in confusion. "But, Dad, what's wrong with this? This is my art. This is a part of me. I can't change myself. As long as I'm the mayor of this town, you'll have to. You must behave properly. And don't you dare defy me," Leonardo shouted. He was already purple with anger. Taking a breath, he fixed his gaze on Ophelia. "And who is this girl in the wheelchair?" The girl flinched. "My name is Ophelia, Senor Ramirez," she said softly. "I don't care what your name is. I don't want to see you with my son." Ophelia lowered her head sadly. "Father, you have no right." Gabriel exploded. He sat next to the girl and squeezed her hand. "I'll decide who I associate with and what to do with my life. This is my final word." His father smirked bitterly. The final word always remains with me, he said ominously and left the garage, leaving the door open. Ophelia started crying. I'm so sorry, she murmured. You have nothing to do with this, Gabriel said firmly, embracing the girl. But I'm not the right one for you, she sniffled. What was I thinking? You're the mayor's son, and I'm just a poor girl in a wheelchair. Gabriel looked into Ophelia's eyes. You're the best thing in the world, he said, love shining in his eyes. Don't believe anyone who says otherwise. Ophelia hugged Gabriel, feeling much better. Still, the image of the enraged Leonardo Ramirez lingered in her mind. The next day, Gabriel wrote to Ophelia and suggested meeting in the evening. But the girl didn't respond. He waited all day, then called her. Ophelia didn't pick up. Worried, Gabriel went to her house. He rang the doorbell, but no one answered. There were no lights on in the windows. Where could they have gone? The concerned young man muttered to himself. He waited outside the house for about an hour, but no one showed up. The next day, he didn't go to school and went straight to Ophelia's in the morning. She still hadn't been in touch. Again, there was no one at home. Gabriel banged on the door with all his might, but to no avail. A neighbor came out at the noise, looking surprised and annoyed. Why are you making such a racket? She asked, displeased. I'm looking for Ophelia. She lives here, Gabriel replied, hopefully looking at the woman. Do you know where she's gone? She's not answering calls or messages. The woman measured him with an assessing look, as if deciding whether to trust him. They left yesterday around noon. I saw her father carrying suitcases and loading them into the trunk. But where did they go? Gabriel exclaimed. And they don't even have a car. It was a fancy car, the woman admitted. Expensive. There was a driver. Maybe Ophelia's father has been appointed the new mayor? The neighbor's last words were dripping with sarcasm. But suddenly, it dawned on Gabriel. A fancy car with a driver, a sudden departure. Could his father be involved in this? Gabriel felt a knot forming in his stomach. He thanked the woman and made his way back to his car. He decided he must find out at all costs whether his father had anything to do with Ophelia's sudden disappearance. Despite the knots in his stomach, Gabriel headed straight for the town hall. Right now, he didn't care what others might think. He didn't want to lose Ophelia. The secretary led the young man to Leonardo's office. The man looked up from his papers, frowning. What are you doing here? His father asked, glancing back at his documents. You should be in school. Ophelia's gone missing. Do you know anything about it? Gabriel asked directly. His father raised an irritated gaze to his son. Who's Ophelia? Oh, that girl in the wheelchair you've been trailing after. How would I know where she's gone? Don't you dare talk like that. Gabriel snapped. He clenched his fists, glaring at his father. This isn't some petty drama. I love that girl. His father shrugged indifferently, and the enraged boy stormed out of his office. He left the town hall and headed for the parking lot. Spotting his father's official car, he saw the old driver, Senor Ignacio, dozing behind the wheel. He tapped on the window, and the old man woke up. It took him a moment to realize what was happening, then he recognized Gabriel and rolled down the window. Senor Ignacio, did you happen to drive a man and a girl in a wheelchair anywhere yesterday at your father's request? Gabriel asked, noticing the tension in the driver's face. Your father didn't tell me to speak to anyone about what happened yesterday. Gabriel smiled the most charming smile he could muster. But you can trust me, can't you? After all, I'm Leonardo's son. The old man smiled. He had known Gabriel since he was a child. Yes, I delivered an envelope from your father to the man and drove them to the train station. The girl was crying so much when she left, poor thing. Gabriel gritted his teeth to stifle a scream. He managed to thank Senor Ignacio somehow and was about to run back to the town hall, but halfway there, he stopped. Shouting and threats wouldn't sway his father. He needed to come up with something else. Suddenly, a desperate idea popped into his head, and he immediately seized upon it. "Nothing, Dad. I'll get back at you for what you've done," Gabriel muttered and dashed to his car. Sitting behind the wheel, he typed in their group chat, "Everyone gather today in half an hour," and drove off. Half an hour later, the entire group of Gabriel gathered in the garage. He quickly briefed the guys on the essence of his idea, omitting Ophelia, the quarrel with his father, and his revenge. Everyone was thrilled. "But why do you need this, Gabriel? Are you sure you want to do this?" his best friend Pablo asked. "Yes, absolutely sure." Gabriel nodded firmly. "Then we're with you, right, guys?" Pablo asked. "Of course," the others confirmed. And they began to rehearse. The next day, Gabriel called the necessary people and arranged everything. After that, he went to the bank, where a savings account was opened in his name, where his father transferred a considerable sum every month. There he negotiated something with the manager. A week remained until Gabriel's idea would be realized. The group rehearsed intensively. Finally, the day arrived. A large stage was set up in the city center. Flags fluttered above it. The inscription on the screen, which was burning at the stage, read, "Charity Performance of Gabriel Ramirez's Group." Below, in slightly smaller letters, it said, "All funds raised will be transferred to the fund for wheelchair users." People were already gathering around the stage. Musicians were getting ready to start. They were adjusting the equipment on stage. TV crews and reporters arrived. Everyone wanted to capture this unprecedented event for the city. "Will Leonardo Ramirez himself attend his son's concert?" said a young dark-haired journalist, smiling dazzlingly into the camera. The mayor arrived too late. The group had already started performing, and he couldn't do anything. The crowd was roaring. The songs were so well received by the audience that they asked the musicians to come out for an encore. Leonardo watched the concert irritably from the balcony of the neighboring administrative building. Finally, the musicians played their last chord, and Gabriel Ramirez took the floor. "I want to thank everyone here for the warm welcome. This is our group's first big performance. Now the whole city knows us. Hooray! Thank you to everyone who felt it was necessary to leave some money in the donation box. All of this will be transferred to those who are in great need of warmth and support. And personally from me, I will transfer 90% of the funds accumulated over 18 years to the fund for wheelchair users, and I'll keep 10% for myself for the time being. Yes, Dad, forgive me, but I won't go to the university you chose. I'll now earn my living with my songs." The words of the young man caused shock and amazement among the audience, who erupted into wild applause moments later. The mayor's son's actions astonished everyone, but none more so than Leonardo Ramirez. Upon hearing Gabriel's speech, he paled, unable to believe his ears. "He's completely lost his mind," the mayor murmured. Leonardo wanted to talk to his son when he returned, but he never showed up at home. Immediately after the concert, Gabriel bid farewell to his friends and got into his car. Ahead of him lay many cities he planned to visit in hopes of finding Ophelia. He suspected that the envelope the driver had given to the girl's father contained a check for a large sum of money, so he could take his daughter far away from the city. But where? That was what Gabriel Ramirez had to find out. He promised himself firmly that he wouldn't give up and would definitely find Ophelia, who continued to ignore his messages. He sent her videos from their charity concert and continued to send her recordings of his performances in different cities. But Ophelia remained silent. Finally, one morning, she sent him a photo of a poster. It featured her portrait and a caption stating that she would be giving her first live performance tonight, lasting an hour. Underneath was an address, and Gabriel, surprised and delighted, immediately dropped everything and headed to the specified city. The journey took about 8 hours, but the guy was so happy that he didn't notice how they flew by. He arrived at the concert half an hour before it started, eagerly awaiting Ophelia's appearance. Finally, she stepped onto the stage. The girl was wearing a beautiful golden dress that harmonized with her hair. At the sight of Ophelia, Gabriel felt his heart beat faster, and wings seemed to grow behind his back. She started singing, and the young man forgot about everything in the world. At one moment, he caught her gaze. She noticed him in the crowd. Ophelia smiled, and her voice sounded even softer and gentler, and Gabriel once again felt that an unbreakable thread forever bound them. "I love you," he whispered, and Ophelia's eyes sparkled like two golden stars. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed the story, please support the video by liking it and leaving a comment. Thank you very much.